I'm Alex.
I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
We're the Ragamuffins.
And we're going to talk about Bring With Horizon Nex Gen.
Right, we were expecting this quite a while ago, this release, weren't we?
It's taking its time.
It has, from what was still meant to be 4 EPs, and the countless delays when this was originally meant to be out in September.
We've had drama as well, with Jordan Fish leaving the band for unknown reasons.
And, I mean, we finally had it released.
Surprise release.
Kind of, I think a lot of it with it is, does this live up to expectations of what people wanted? Because personally, I really, really enjoyed survival horror. That was something that really kind of actually drew me back into enjoying Bring Me the Horizon again after a while. And so I kind of was intrigued to see if this would carry that across for me. And spoiler alert, I don't think it did.
Okay.
I actually struggled quite a lot with it. I mean, looking at the album length, 55 minutes and 16 songs already was like, Jesus Christ, we've got nearly an hour of listening here, which is daunting, and I'm kind of immediately thinking, is this going to keep my attention? Quite a lot of the singles, I think, in the grand scheme of it, were the strongest songs. I felt like the amount of like interludes that they kind of used, in a way, felt repetitive to me and had such similar themes going across, and I didn't really enjoy it. I know you're pulling a face because you love a good interlude.
Love an interlude. Thematic.
And it just felt, I don't know, I just couldn't really connect with this. And I know, because you'd spoken to me before, just kind of go into a little bit of what you think. You felt it quite cohesive. And I actually found it very much the opposite. I felt it, at points, it was just a little bit everywhere. And it didn't feel to me, personally, as an album.
I'm going to say a complete oxymoron now, but to me this album was cohesive in the sense that it was all over the place. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
like
it does.
It is by nature an erratic album, and I think it's very just very busy sounding, and I think there are some songs where that really works to its benefit. Some, like for example, Amen. It's quite a very densely populated song. There's a lot going on. There's 3 features. Like there's almost like no moment for like your ears to like rest in that song, and for that song it works. I think that's like by design. But then you've got some other songs on here where the same sort of songwriting style and effect is in use, and it becomes really like just distracting and like headache inducing to the point where it's like, oh fuck, this is just too much. So I don't know, I don't want to immediately be like, oh, look what they can't survive without Jordan Fish, but my immediate analysis is that he was, to some degree, you have to assume, like a very good judge of when enough is enough. I feel like those reins have kind of been taken away. That's like, and I know we don't really know how the process works, really, but you can kind of infer that from what we already know about the band and how they worked on previous albums. To me, it seems like there's been a little bit too much of throwing everything at the wall. Just because it sticks doesn't mean it's all good. Do you know what I mean? That's my impression. My initial impression, at least.
I'm a relatively casual Bring Me the Horizon listener. I've not really loved anything they've done since Sempiternal. I think Survival Horror was great. I think they're, well, not great on the whole, but like there's particular songs on there that like really stand out as being some of the most enjoyable in Bring Me the Horizon's discography, I think. However, I think this album's really good, and I think it's some of their best work since Sempiternal. I agree with James's points that it's maybe a bit long, and I agree now that you've made that point about Jordan Fish sort of being there to rein it in. I do see that it's a bit sort of erratic and a bit like crazy and hyperactive, but I think that's a reflection of where the band, or at least where Ollie is at the moment, that's a reflection of his personality. That's like what he's like. I love songs like Utopia. I think that's a really, really strong start to the album. My favourite of the new ones is probably 10 Statues. Love that one. I think they do choruses really well on this album. But there's still sort of a bit of a heaviness to it, a lot of screaming. It's tricky with Ollie because like it's quite apparent that he's not as good of a heavy vocalist as he was in the past, but he still manages to kind of pull out somewhat of a performance. How much of it is sort of vocally edited, we don't know, but it's strong enough. I think it's passable. I think in terms of negatives, the main negative is that the singles on this album have been sat with us for a very long time. Die For You came out in 2021,
It's 3 years
which
ago.
was basically on the survival horror album cycle. So
They played it when we saw them in Birmingham, didn't they?
Yeah. I would argue that Die For You, Lost and Strangers should have been left off of this album.
or could have just been an EP.
Or been just a little collection together. For a few reasons. Number one, I think they are... Die For You I quite like. Lost and Strangers I think are like two of their weakest songs.
I think the choruses in Strangers is brilliant,
I agree with you on that.
but I see what you mean.
It feels like an arena chorus.
Yep.
I did crunch some numbers, if you'll indulge me.
Go for it.
Because I have seen, and I've said it in a lot of our content in the past, that I have the attention span of a 7-year-old child. And when I saw the track list and the runtime for this, I was immediately like, ugh, get out of here. But if you remove all of the singles that we had, which were 6, I believe, which is ridiculous, that cuts the runtime down to 35 minutes, 30 seconds of new music. If you then take out the interludes as well, it cuts it down to 30 minutes. So
I think the interludes are fine. I think the interludes,
I also think the interludes are
I think the interludes serve their purpose on the album. But based on that, maybe the singles we had should have been an EP, and they should have just started this album cycle like after that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we don't know the exact sort of ins and outs of the Jordan Fish situation, but like we can assume that he was involved with those singles. So maybe put them out, come to an agreement with him, put them out as a separate thing, and then have the album being a bit shorter.
Yeah. Because I believe that's what led to so much of the delays, wasn't it? It was
it seems
the
that
legal
way.
fact
Yeah.
of what's going on.
But then also the decision to just announce the album release like 10 or 12 hours before it's out, with no, and like streaming only, there's no, and download, there's no physical release until September. So again, going to be interesting from a chart perspective, see what happens there.
I do think of the new singles, I think of the new songs, sorry, I think Utopia for me is the standout. But the rest of it, I found it at the moment, as far as with how long we've had to sit with it, pretty forgettable, or ranging between forgettable or just downright irritating.
I don't think they're forgettable in the sense of them being bad songs. It's maybe just because there's so much of it and there's so much to take in, and it's so noisy in the sense of there's so much going on that it's maybe difficult to listen to and difficult to appreciate the songs.
So interesting with that.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that.
I felt like survival horror, although as well being a shorter length release, I feel like there's more differentiation in types of songs, where you have a Dear Diary is very different from a Ludens, which is very different to a Kingslayer, which is very different to Butterflies with Amy Lee. I think there's so much more difference and variation in the type of music they're doing, which I think is actually where Bring Me the Horizon do best, because they are so capable of a span of things. I feel like the collection of this as an album is too narrow. I feel like there are too many songs that are more similar than different, giving us a wider span of what this band actually are amazingly capable of doing. And I think that kind of pigeonholing left it kind of a bit more stale and harder to go back and revisit, because it felt like too much of a similar kind of thing with it, and like a bit too chaotic with it.
Although one thing they have done differently on this album is the track Limousine. Although it's different in the sense of it's clearly got Deftones influence, and you could say to an extent Sleep Token influence. I mean, that breakdown sounds... I'm not like making any accusations
They're
here,
ripping off Sleep Token.
It sounds... It reminds me of the Granite breakdown. But I think it's cool. It's one of my favourite songs on the album.
We did ask our Ragamuffin Club to let us know their thoughts. You can join that in the description below. It's free. Join our community. I'll read you a few of the thoughts that we've had.
Please do.
So Edward said, honestly, I've kind of moved on from it already. We had the bangers released. Limousine is good, but I've kind of turned my attention to other albums and tracks, which is surprising given my love for Bring Me. It could just be fatigue though. I've had Niall that said Limousine is a bop, which, like we've said, I think, like I say, might have been on release day that came out as a single, potentially. I think that is
I always
more
find that
standout.
weird though, by the way.
Pointless, I think.
Why release a single when it's out?
Yeah, no point.
Like
The
single
album's there.
the purpose of a single, I think, should be to set an example of what's going to be on the album and like build excitement for it. Don't bother releasing something after it's already out.
No,
What's the point?
just push the album.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to us in a way. Matthew said, it's a bit of a mess, it's all over the place, and I enjoy the hell out of it. So it's all going to come in different flavours to different people. And Jared said, only gave this a listen the other day. Quite enjoyed it, to be fair. I've never been a huge Bring Me fan, but I think I'm going to need to get on board at some point. And I think that's kind of the wonderful thing, in a way, to wrap it up about Bring Me the Horizon, is that their career has spanned over so many years. We've heard so many different sounds to them. Even from like friends that I know, everyone has their favourite releases, which are usually entirely different sounds.
Yeah.
And they're very much a band that if you had someone who had never heard of them to say, oh, what genre are they? You can't really define them. They're always pushing the boundaries with everything. They're still doing this. Never on any band's discography really is anything going to appeal to everyone. And I think it's always brave and bold to make the music you want to make and push the boundaries and create what you want to create. Fans aren't always going to like it, but you do it for yourself with that and can always commend them and respect them for doing that. What makes me interested to see is this is still in the Post-Human series. Originally meant to be 4 EPs. So maybe we're still kind of getting 4 albums. Let's kind of be reasonable with it at this point. We're going to obviously sit on this for a while.
Yeah,
I'd be intrigued to know the direction
said,
of what we're going to go
I'd
forward.
quite like for there to be a bit of a break now.
Yeah, I don't need anything from them in a while, but what does still tick over in my brain is that 4 release kind of thing, and thinking about, do they have an overarching theme they want to do with this? Is it just 4 complete different sounds? It's the stupid thing of being like, yeah, they just put an album out and I'm already thinking the next thing.
Well, I suppose survival horror's kind of like horror movie themed. Nex Gen is video game themed.
So let us
Maybe
know down
there'll
below.
be some other book themed for the next one.
Hey,
Maybe.
who knows?
I
Book
think
talk.
I think like a trilogy is probably more likely
You think?
than, because if you're thinking from their perspective, it's become an album thing now. It's not really going to be. I don't think they're going to shrink down to EPs for the last 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea of trying to not force 2 more of these, but I just feel like as a fan as well, 1 more is like enough.
Trilogy's a nice way to
for it
complete
to
it.
feel like enough. Also, Kool-Aid is an all-time top 5 Bring Me song.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, that box
if the album gave us nothing but that, then that's fine.
gave you 1 song.
Give me 1 song. No, I like it. It's a good album. I think also as well, my own like personal experience of being a Bring Me fan is a lot of like immediate resistance to what's new, and then over time I like sit with it more, and I end up being sort of like 6 months behind a lot of other people, especially like that's how Ammo felt to me. I really was averse to it at the start, and now I really enjoy it. So maybe that's the path that I'm on for this album, is that the more I sit with it and the more I'm able to sort of unpick the freneticness of the soundscape, I think it might maybe
I
start
think
to
it
appeal more.
almost doesn't help with the release being like, oh, okay, new album at midnight. It's 55 minutes long. It's a bit mad. And then you've suddenly got to like almost cancel what you were planning to just listen to it and like take it in. Whereas if you had like a specific date that the album's coming out, maybe it would have been easier to sort
At
of
least put that anticipation for
put
it.
some time aside to take it all
and
in.
like release the track list in advance so people can kind of again, just the psychology of like preparing for an hour of music when it's coming in 10 hours, whereas when it's coming in like 2 weeks.
In fact, can we mention on NA, obviously the tour at the start of this year, I think originally was meant to be around the release of this album. Instead, they got the crowd to kind of chant a part of it. I have to say, if I was in the crowd and like getting excited about hearing my feature on the album, I would have been quite disappointed.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. That it just falls flat, and it feels genuinely, and whether it's recorded well or not, it feels like it was very much done in a studio. It doesn't feel like, I feel like part of that, if you're going to do that,
if you
want that
listen,
live
if you listen really
experience.
hard, it sounds like a crowd, but also they've put loads of effects and stuff
Yeah,
over the top of it.
it doesn't feel like that crowd experience. I think if
agree.
you're going to do something like that, you kind of lean into that live aspect a little bit more somehow. It feels almost too clean.
But on the other hand, there's loads of people that are really excited about it and are
You're
really
on the
happy
Bring
to
Me
say they're on a
album.
Bring Me the Horizon album. So fair play. But also, your name's not in the credits, like Jordan Fish.
R.I.P. by the way is obviously about him.
Yeah, I feel like it is an interesting go from that into Amen
Yeah.
as well. I find that dual kind of part there. Let us know down below what you think of Next Gen. You're a Bring Me fan. Is this kind of new to you? Where you lie in terms of this album, and if it's appealed to you, if you've heard some of the songs live, let us know kind of what they're like as well. Like I say, you've heard from the Ragamuffin Club in here. Join that in the description down below.
We'll be discussing other albums in there.
Exactly.
And all the kind of new releases.
Plenty of stuff. Plenty of stuff that we can't read in the YouTube comment section. It's not enough there. So join the club below. It's free. And then subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Festival season's happening.
Yippee!
Slam dunk, download, hopefully Outbreak, Trees, Burn It Down, Miserless Company, who knows what else. All kinds of good shit coming. So yeah, just click that big red button.